Welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another edition of Mr. Commander Cheapskate Reviews. And this time we're going to take a look at a publication that is released by Games Workshop. We're going to take a look today at the Necromunda book, the Book of Perils, which is the expansion set that came out for it a couple of months ago, actually. My gaming group and I have been playing a couple of battle reports for our current Dominion War campaign that we've been doing for Necromunda for our Tales of the Underhive. And so I bought this book for my gaming group and I to look over, so that way we can take a look at it, see where some of the things involved in it. So in this one, we're going to do kind of a review of the book, talk about the contents, talk about some aspects of it that are kind of neat, and determine whether or not this is a good buy or not for your future Necromunda campaigns. So that being said, let's get this video review on a roll. Alright, so as you can see, this is Necromunda, the Book of Peril. First thing we're going to do is you can see it kind of talks a little bit about the introduction, the information about what's inside the book, so kind of gives you some neat little narrative stuff. But the main thing we're talking about, however, is primarily this page here, which is the contents page for the most part. Now, the neat thing about the Book of Peril does a couple of things, in my opinion. Basically, it does four major things. The first thing it does, of course, is provide a lot of information about adding guilds inside of your campaign. So if you're playing a Dominion War campaign, you want to have your gangs work for different guilds. Maybe the different guilds are trying to build territories up in a certain sector of the Underhive, and you're trying to, want to play a game like that. Or if you want to involve the guilders and a narrative aspect to your game, this is a really good purchase for you guys. And the reason why is because it kind of talks about all the different guilds that you have. Like you have the Promethean guild, they sell all the fuel and all the energy that's on Necromunda, for example. You have the Slavers Guild, which supports all the manpower. The Guild of Coin, which takes care of money and mercantile things. Iron Guild, which makes weapons and equipment. So if you want to have a situation to where your gangs kind of ally themselves with one another, it kind of helps out. So up here in the top, it talks about the Great Web of Necromunda. It actually gives the narrative aspect of these characters, a lot of background information about who they are, where these guilds come from, what they specialize in, and the different rules that you have when it comes to making the alliances for each of the guilds are represented here under the Making Guild Alliance. Now this part's kind of cool because what it does, it adds special rules to your campaign. It tells you what kind of things you need to do in order to maintain a guild alliance with one of these different guilds, and each of them are very different, requiring different things from your gang to participate in. They talk about the pros as well as the cons of joining such a guild and how you can go about losing your alliance with them, what kind of bonuses they give to you, things of that nature. So that's probably the biggest one that is actually really good for this book, this guild alliance aspect of the rules as well as the narrative behind them. Now, the second thing that this book also does a really good job on, and this relates back onto the guild, is the guild representatives. In the campaign mode of Necromunda, if you decide to use guilds in your campaign, the guild, one of the aspects of that makes it kind of handy is that they actually send soldiers, mercenaries, bodyguards, employees from the different guilds to kind of help out your gang to establish dominance within your Underhive campaign and your Dominion campaign. So because of that, these guys have the different things. For example, the Nautican Siphoning delegation, for example, is a small gang of mercenaries and guild representatives from the Guild of Water, the Water Guild. And what they do is that they can help your gang out. They provide special rules for you guys to use in actual combat. The Pyromantic Conclave, for example, is a member of the Promethean Guild, and they bring primarily flamer weapons and things like that. Each one of them, of course, have their different additions that they add to your gang. There's also some different hindrances that they have as well. So that's the second thing that this book actually does for you. One, tells you about the guilds and the special rules involved with them, and two, how you can actually have actual gang, different members of those guilds helping out your gang in actual battles. Now, I don't believe Games Workshop actually makes any models for the different guilds. I don't think Forge World does either. So even though there are no models that you can purchase for these guys, they give you a lot of pictures and a lot of artwork that kind of shows you the different members of these guilds rather. And so because of that, you can kind of use that to kind of, convert your own miniatures or build your own miniatures in order to represent those guys. So if you're looking for a new kind of inventive way to add new characters and new flavor to your campaign, that's one of the cool things about it, especially when it comes to the guilds, because there's a lot of cool things that you can do with it, if you decide to buy it. Now, the third thing that this actually does, that's probably another really big one as well, is the Venator Bounty Hunter gangs. Before, when you wanted to play Venator Bounty Hunters in the Necromunda, you actually had to use the rules from an issue of White Dwarf magazine. They kind of broke down rules that you could use for the Venator gangs and the things that you could do with them, their skills, their stats, and everything else like that. This version of the rules actually makes it more official, and it actually changes up a little bit about how you can run Venator Bounty Hunter gangs in your campaign. Now, originally, whenever you made up your gang for Venator Bounty Hunters, you had hunt champions, you had hunt leaders, you also had hunters. You could choose your stats for the characters. Those rules relatively stay the same, and there's nothing changed about that. The only big difference is when you want to put your Venators in a campaign. Now, originally in the White Dwarf rules for Venators, the way you generated income was that you actually used your reputation total. You took your total of reputation, times it by 10, and that would net you your money that you can use in the post-game sequence of the campaigns after every battle report. So that way you could use that to, upgrade your gang, make them stronger, maybe recruit new ones, things of that nature. Now, the difference now is that when you do your campaigns now, instead of doing that, what you end up doing now is that you can now attack and take territory like every other gang in the campaign. So you start off with a settlement, of course, and then when you capture different territories and the different bonuses they give to your gang for the campaign, you can use that for yourself as well now. So no longer are you being paid with just reputation anymore. It's now based on the territories that you actually control, which is actually kind of a good thing because Venator gangs prior to this update could get really powerful really quickly because they can rely upon a regular amount of income every single battle report. So it's kind of interesting how they kind of do that part. So that part is kind of cool as well. So if you definitely want to run a Venator gang, especially in your campaign, this is a definite buy for you because it kind of shows you how to create a gang. That way you can make it very lore friendly with your players, and then of course you can just play like a normal game after that because your Venator Bounty Hunter gang now has actual rules associated to it. So that part is really neat as well. There's also another really cool little addendum to it called a Venator Bounty Hunter gang, where you can actually make up your gang made up of bounty hunters, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the Dramatis Personae portion of this, where you actually have bounty hunters joining up, is making a gang of bounty hunters to go out and work together. So there's some positive and negatives to that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in detail. So once again, 3 things that are really big so far. 1, they talk about the fluff of the different guilds. 2, how you can have the alliances and what kind of bonuses they add to you. 3, the Venator Bounty Hunter gang rules, which is probably the main focus of why I purchased this book, because I really wanted to use that a lot for the campaign. My friends wanted to add 2 Venator Bounty Hunter gangs in my current campaign, and they definitely wanted to use those rules, so that's why we use them. Now, the next thing that you probably want to be, the reason why you want to get this, was probably the 4th biggest reason why you want to purchase this book, is right here. It talks about the bad zones right over here, and this whole section is dedicated to that. Now, the bad zones represent parts of the Underhive that are basically condemned. Either they have been overgrown, or they're abandoned, or something really horrific happened to it, or they're just really zones of just dangerous places where you don't really want to go if you don't have to. This kind of relates a little bit to the Outlanders expansion. Back in the mid-90s when Necromunda first came out, the very first expansion set for that game was called Outlanders. And that game section talked about what they used to call the Outlands, or wastelands of Necromunda. There were places like, large chemical pits, places that had been condemned, places that were forgotten about, things that had mutants and, all kinds of crazy things going on in those areas. And this game kind of does exactly that as well. This kind of adds a whole new set of terrain, a whole new set of elements that you could use now inside of your campaigns to make your terrain even deadlier or more interesting as time goes on as well. And that's exactly what this whole Bad Zones location is dedicated to. It kind of adds another element of danger, another element of randomness to your campaigns, and makes it a little more interesting as well, because as before with normal Necromunda, just straight-laced rules as written Necromunda, there isn't really much of the terrain aside from like falling that really impact you in that game. This adds all kinds of different things, whether it is, this is the big one right here, generating events. You have different things that can take place inside the bad zones, things like earthquakes, blackout conditions, poison gas, swarms of mutated animals, and there's a whole bunch of different things. It's a D66 table, and you roll it off if you want to add that to it to make it more interesting in your battlefield and make it more deadly. One of my favorite ones from the Bad Zones battlefields, generating events, is like basically where like the floor is kind of like lava type rules, where if you fall onto the onto the top of the table, you die or take out of action, whether it's poison goo or actual lava. So it's up to you. You guys have to basically stay off the ground. So it's kind of cool. That's one of the one of my favorite personal rules from that set. So it's actually kind of cool. Another thing that's also kind of cool too is that you do have some specialized ammunition and war gear. For example, one of the big things you have to worry about in the Bad Zones terrain is this part here. It talks about carnivorous plants. You do have different plants that can do different things. Either they poison you, paralyze you, some of them eat you alive. And so you can buy specialized ammunition. Basically, it's kind of like flamer ammo, where you could use it. Phosphor ammo is what they call it. You can actually use it to destroy plants. Excuse me, and that's what that's designed to do as well. They also got some different one-of-a-kind items as well that you can purchase for your gang. So if you're looking for a way to expand the trading post for your gang, this is a really good way of doing that as well. So it kind of helps you out with that part as well. So not only does it help generate terrain, generate the different events that are taking place to make your scenarios more interesting, it also talks a little bit about some of the gear that you have as well. And like I said before, there's some new things now within the terrain that you have now as well. They actually give you rules for like generators, for sacred monuments that you might find, churches and cathedrals and things of that nature, generators, lathes, all kind of different equipment, carnivorous plants. So if you want to add some more elements to your game and make your terrain a little bit more immersive, you can actually add that aspect to your guys' campaign, because outside of the Book of Perils, the only real thing you can really do is open doors and operate terminals, really, in Necromunda, as rules are written. This adds another layer to it to make it more interesting if you want to do that as well. And just to be honest with you guys, these bad zone rules make it really, really interesting. It makes a battlefield really pop if you really want to do that as well. So that's an option you want to use as well. And then, of course, as always, there's also specialized scenarios that take place specifically in the bad zone, which is actually kind of cool. One of my favorite one here is like the toll bridge. This one's actually kind of cool one, where you actually are a gang that actually controls a bridge and you charge people to go across and you're fighting for a position of that one. That's like a classic scenario from like the earliest editions of Necromunda when it first came out. So that's a really cool part as well. So if you were looking for new equipment, new rules, new environmental effects, the bad zones section is really, really good for you as well. And those are primarily the 4 main reasons why you might want to buy this book. 1's the guilds, 2, the rules of using those guilds, 3, Venator Bounty Hunter gangs, 4, bad zone, and adding that to your guys' campaign as well. There could be a 5th reason if you really want to. This part here, I know some people are really big on the dramatis personae aspect of Necromunda, especially these 2 characters, Cal Jericho as well as Scabs. They're 2 special characters from the original set of Necromunda when it came out in the 90s. And these are 2 different characters. Cal Jericho is kind of like an adventurer, dashing rogue, Han Solo type bounty hunter character, and his psychic Scabs, who's half ratskin, who's also a half ratskin, half bounty hunter as well, and they go on all kinds of adventures. In fact, when Necromunda first came out, they actually had novelizations, and these were the 2 main characters of those novels, were Cal Jericho and Scabs, and the different adventures they got into involved in the Underhive. And they actually have their new rule sets down. Their rule sets are very narrative based. It's kind of based on the narrative that they had from when they first came out in the novels, so those are kind of cool as well. And they also give you a bunch of different other characters that you could also use as well if you want to, and adding that to your guys' to your campaign as well. They offer all kinds of bounty hunters in this game system as well. Now, just besides Cal Jericho and Scabs, most of these guys are primarily bounty hunters for the most part. There's also a pair of Harlequin-looking assassin type characters that are also in there as well. They're not listed here in the table of contents, but I really don't want to get sued by Games Workshop. That's why I'm not showing you the pages, because I don't have permission from them to do that. All I can really show you is the table of contents, so that way you can see what's going on in that part. So yeah, that's kind of another aspect too. So if you're looking for some new characters that you want to add to your campaign, this could also be really important as well. For me, that's not really so much a concern for my gaming group and I. For my campaign, we're not really into special characters too much. We like to think that our normal characters are special enough as it is. But if you're an arbitrator, or if you're a player who wants to add these to your campaigns, you can easily do that as well. And they actually have some pretty interesting characters that you can use and get that done as well. So yeah, that pretty much kind of sums up the entirety of the Book of Peril from Necromunda. Once again, just to kind of reiterate, rules about the different guilds and stories about those guys, the allies that you can get from the different guild representatives in your gangs. The most important one, which is probably for me, is the Venator Bounty Hunter gang rules, as well as the bad zone rules. Those are the ones that are the reason why I purchased this book, because I wanted to add those in for our campaign. We might be doing that later on in our current campaign that we're running on to make it a little bit more interesting. So, who knows? And of course, a little, not as important to me, but could be important to you, is the dramatis personae aspect of this as well. So in the end, personally, I think it's a really good buy. Especially if you're an arbitrator, if you want to make your campaigns really pop and make them really interesting, you could easily just do that just by using the bad zone rules just by themselves. If you're a player that's really interested in using Venator Bounty Hunter gangs or adding dramatis personae to your groups, that's another good reason to buy this as well. If you're an arbitrator and you want to add guilds and have them have big impact in your campaign, this is also another excellent way of doing it as well. It just adds to another depth to a really awesome game right off the bat. So I highly recommend it. If you get a chance, buy it. It's a really good buy. It's got a lot of helpful information, and it can also make your campaigns really, really pop in that aspect as well. In fact, a little while I'm planning on using the bad zone scenario rules for the different aspects of our campaign, and my gaming group and I are definitely using the Venator Bounty Hunter gangs now in order to make that happen. So that's going to do for this one, you guys, for our Commander Cheapskate reviews. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all those greatest news about the hobby aspect of this channel. That's going to do for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.